So they've got Adamu in some of this is kind of confusing because there's different stories, different names, different narratives, and I gotta keep them straight in my head. And it's yeah. Anyways, they got Adamu in the Garden of Eden, and or yeah, Eden, and Enki and Enlil are arguing over whether they should, you know, teach this guy all this knowledge. Enlil says no. Enki decides to do it anyways, being the snake he is. No, actually, the snake is a symbol for wisdom, and that is the tree of knowledge. Has nothing to do with the serpent coming and whispering in Eve's ear. There was no fruit, and there's a lot of symbolism there. So Enlil finds out what Enki's trying to do, and he kicks the humans out of. If there was two humans, I can't remember if it was just Adam or Adam and Eve, and there was nobody named Eve, and his name was actually Adamu. And there's a story where there was one. There's also a story where there was the first human that was made was perfect, and they thought he was perfect, but they were making males, and they weren't getting any females. They were just getting males out of all this work that they were doing, impregnating all these, and they were impregnated a bunch of these Anunnaki girls after they figured out how to do this. But they were just getting males, and then they finally got the idea they needed females, and they made females, and there was no rib involved. It was basically took the essence of Adam, and they worked and twisted things. I imagine they finally got the chromosomes right to where they were like, okay, this is what we got to do, and they made females. Problem was they couldn't breed because they were all hybrids, so they had to make another tweak in it, and yeah, that's a whole nother story. And they finally got it done. So then you get to the part where they talk about Cain and Abel, Cain and Abel. The story was parallel again to Genesis in the Bible, but it was a little different twist. So Cain was supposed to, anyways, they got the slave race that they wanted, and they just needed to start getting them to breed. And of course, it's going to take a few years for them to mature and all that, and it's going to be a while before they all have kids, and then they get mature enough to have kids, and yeah, quite the project, right? And then so Cain and Abel were the first two children of the first couple that was breedable, and so Cain was taught basically to be a farmer. He was given all the seeds of Nibiru to raise all your grains. And Abel was taught to be in charge of all the animals, be a herder, shepherd, whatever. And then what happened was they would have their harvest and they would have their festival, kind of like we do now, end of the year festival, and they would sit down and enjoy the harvest of you know, the grains, turned it into bread, I guess. I don't know what else they would turn it into, but there was a lot of talk about bread even back then. Um, and then, of course, they probably slaughtered some animals and ate them too. So the story goes that the lords would come down and they would enjoy the feast, and they were kind of doting on Abel, and just like me, I mean, I'd rather eat meat, and I'd enjoy meat more than I would bread. Let's just put it that way, and it makes, sense to me. But Cain was jealous, and he didn't like it. He felt slighted, so he waited for the perfect moment, and he slew a bull, beat his brains out, basically, with a stone, and he like realized what he did, and he was ashamed, and he finally let the cat out of the bag, and then the gods found out about it. They came and they investigated, and they were not happy with Cain, and so one of the things you'll notice about the Sumerians and is their beards and their hair. I mean, they were like, it almost looked like they were meticulous about the way they groomed and did things with their beards and their hair, and they were like, it was like a big thing. Almost all of them that I've ever seen had it. But so they stripped Cain for his punishment. They stripped him of his facial hair, and they took him and basically dropped him off in the Americas. From the description, that's exactly what it sounded like. And the funny thing is, like, you look at the Olmecs and the statues that they had, and they have a lot of African features, um, and that's kind of what I'm assuming was going on there with the first humans. Was they were African descent. They had certain features. So, and I don't know, there could be other things too, because like if you got a bunch of beings and they've already been around for millions of years, perhaps they have already like mutations and stuff. And I mean, some of it's unclear, but like there was one description about Enki who did a lot of screwing around and throwing his seed all over the place. Um, and he made the humans, and he slept with humans, and he slept with Anunnaki women, and he slept with people he probably shouldn't have been sleeping with, even though he didn't know he was sleeping with them. He didn't know the genealogy of it. Um, but supposedly there was a description of him having like platinum blonde hair and blue eyes, and I thought that was interesting because like there's a lot of black hair too, and it's like, okay, I mean, anyways, so it makes it just things that I wonder about, and I'm like trying to figure this all out in my head. So where did the blonde hair, blue eyed people come from, and Caucasians, and the different races and the different features. But what I thought was interesting is later on in the story they were talking about this kind of, and they were like they purposely made different humans with different characteristics, because later on what they did, and it might not have happened right now when they were like using them for digging up the gold and doing all this work. This might have came later when they decided to upgrade, and I think that's what's happening. Like people talk about the Cro-Magnon and Neanderthals, and then there's like all these different categories of humans, and sometimes I wonder if maybe possibly if this story has any merit with these intelligent beings that are messing around with DNA and stuff. Could they have, you know, done that periodically? Just said, you know what, we're gonna try to upgrade this being, and some of that'll make sense later too in some of the stories. But it's just something I was thinking about during all this, and after I've already read some of the stories and listened to some of the stories, and so yeah, this is all going on, and then they talked about Gigi, basically, they were grabbing Earth women, making them their wives. They didn't have any females, so they felt entitled to have their fun too. And then some of the other Anunnaki also were kind of fond of the Earth girls that was created, and I mean, I don't blame them. I don't know what exactly they looked like. Apparently, they looked a lot like us, but they were giants, and that was another thing that didn't kind of make sense. I was like, well, if these guys were that big, what are you going to do to these poor girls? Oh, Lord. Or maybe they were doing something different. I don't know. I, I mean, some of the maybe that's where some of the big guys come in. Different sized dinglings and all that. Um, but there's also some other things too, like the ages in Genesis. Like Adam was 900 years, Noah was 900 years. All these guys are living for hundreds of years, and that was another thing that always made me question the Bible too. What is going on here? Really, 900 years? Are you kidding me? Get out of here! Nobody lives that long. 100 years maybe. But then I ran into these stories, and I was like, oh, these guys are hybrids. Um, so all these guys were living for tens of thousands of years, and if you look at the Sumerian Kings list, like the ages got shorter and shorter. And they explain this that, I mean, the scientists can explain this to you too. Like there's something in us, I can't remember what it's called, but like basically, eventually it can't repair itself. Um, I'd have to look it up. Getting into subjects that I can't remember. But so they could live for a long, long time. But when they got to Earth and they started spending a lot of time on Earth, the sun had an effect on this. Makes sense to me because the sun, I mean, the sun helps the plants grow, but it also makes things die. It destroys things over time. It's like you can use sun to purify water if you do it right, because the sun can kill stuff because there is enough radiation and we are close enough to the sun to, and that's why life is short, I guess, for humans and animals on this earth. And I was like, okay, but now as I keep going, more and more of the pieces are falling together for the stories in Genesis, the Bible, and all the other things that didn't make sense. So, yeah, they're making, in the Bible, they call them the Nephilim. And I'm not sure if that's correct or not. I do know that they talk about the giants in the Bible, and they talked about the giants that were being bred through humans, and they were having these kids together, and they were giants. And I was like, what in the world? How? These poor girls. I mean, were they getting tore up? What's how? That's the one part that didn't make sense to me. But all right, maybe they had a way to deal with it. I don't know. Yeah, and then this is where the flood story starts to come in. This has been going on for hundreds of thousands of years, and the earth is full of humans and these giants, and they're everywhere, all across the planet. So we'll pick up there. Love you. See you in the next one.